In August 1926, the District Attorney of Los Angeles buried the biggest mystery in America. No indictment, no trial, no case. 100 years ago this week, the file on Aimee Semple McPherson was closed, and it stayed closed for exactly 41 days. This is the story of the month a case died, and what it took to raise it from the dead. The Douglas Daily Dispatch of Arizona, August the 6th. Keyes says no evidence for prosecution. One line on one morning and a story that had owned every front page in the country all summer simply stopped. To understand why that line landed like a verdict, you need the case it ended. That story is case file number 1 on this desk. Here is the short version. In May, Aimee Semple McPherson, the most famous preacher in America, walked into the ocean at Venice Beach and vanished. For 5 weeks, a city mourned her as drowned. Then, in June, she walked out of the Mexican desert near Douglas, Arizona, alive, composed, and carrying a story: kidnappers, a shack, a ransom of $500,000, and an escape across the sand. America wanted to believe her. The details would not cooperate. 13 hours in the desert, and her shoes carried grass stains. Grass in a desert. And the shack was never found. If you watched Case File 1, you know the clues. What you do not know yet is what the county did about them. By July, the questions had grown too loud to ignore. The Los Angeles grand jury called for the file. For 12 days in July, witnesses filed through the jury room. Some summoned all the way from Douglas, Arizona, the town that found her. The evangelist testified too and never moved an inch from her story. And on July the 20th, the grand jury answered, no indictments in McPherson case. The report, read to Judge Keach, was a single paragraph. The evidence, it said, is insufficient to warrant an indictment. The district attorney had even left blank indictments in the jury room made out against 3 persons, 2 men and a woman. 2 of them she had named Steve and Rose. The blanks came back unsigned. Nobody would be charged with kidnapping Aimee Semple McPherson because nobody could agree that anyone had. Because by then the investigation was no longer really about kidnappers. It was about a rented cottage in Carmel by the sea, about witnesses who swore they had seen the missing evangelist living there through the very weeks the ocean was being dragged for her body, and about Kenneth Ormiston, the married radio engineer from her own temple who had vanished when she did. The case against her came down to small things. A grocery list from the cottage said to be in her handwriting, witnesses who wavered under pressure, fingerprints from the cottage, too smudged to read. District Attorney Asa Keyes weighed it all, and on August the 5th, he issued the statement he had promised for weeks. He would not gamble the enormous expense of a criminal trial unless and until the grand jury is prepared to justify it. The investigation, he said, had been one of the most difficult ever presented to a prosecutor. Then Superior Judge Arthur Keach turned to the grand jurors themselves and did something almost unheard of. He rebuked them in open court. There had been leaks from the jury room all summer long, secret testimony surfacing in the newspapers within hours. To the public, the judge warned, it may be open to the inference that the grand jury is playing politics. That such an inference is possible is intolerable. Remember that word, leaks. And with that, silence. Here is the front page of the Daily Kennebec Journal of Maine the very next morning. Charles Ponzi losing a round in his fight against extradition. The president mending a fence at his Vermont farm, seed potatoes. And about the woman who had owned these pages for 3 months. Not one single line. The loudest story in America did not fade away. It was switched off, overnight, like a lamp. That Sunday, she returned to her pulpit at Angelus Temple in triumph, before thousands. She had faced the ocean, the desert, and the grand jury of Los Angeles County. And officially, at least, she had beaten them all. The Washington Sunday Star ran 104 pages that weekend. Politics, crab fishermen, leopard hunts. Not one of them was about her. A vindication tour was already in the air. The country, meanwhile, had found a new obsession. The Evening Star, August the 13th. Bribed to leave, Hall Mills case prober asserts. A murdered minister and his choir singer, a widow's brother and cousin, jailed in New Jersey. The case this desk opened as case file number 2 was exploding into arrests that week. The spotlight had a new address. Nobody was looking at Los Angeles anymore, which is usually exactly when a case comes back. Because through the quiet weeks of August, someone kept pulling at the threads. The leaks Judge Keech had condemned became a scandal of their own, and on September the 2nd, the court dismissed the entire grand jury. Every juror fired, and into the district attorney's office walked a new witness. A woman with a story about Carmel, about a sick sister, and about who had really been in that cottage. Her story would change again and again, but it gave Asa Keys something he could no longer set aside. September the 16th, 1926, 41 days after the case was declared dead. Criminal charges: Aimee Semple McPherson, her mother, Kenneth Ormiston, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to manufacture evidence. The Washington Daily News: Aimee's followers pray all night as her arrest nears. 1,000 of the faithful kneeling in the temple through the small hours. The man who buried the case in August had come back in September to dig it up himself. The hearing that followed became one of the loudest court spectacles Los Angeles ever staged. And in January, it collapsed. Every charge dropped. And 2 years later, Asa Keys, the man who closed this case, reopened it, then dropped it again. Went to San Quentin prison for taking bribes in another matter entirely. So look once more at that August statement. No evidence for prosecution, and tell me what it was. Caution, cowardice, or a favour, from a man whose price we happen to know. The comments are open. This has been the Century Desk. Every week we open the newspapers from exactly 100 years ago, and next Sunday the desk keeps an appointment made 2 weeks ago. The Kennebec Journal's Midnight Bulletin, film star still near death, Rudolph Valentino, the most famous face on earth, dying in a New York hospital room at 31. It will be 100 years, to the very day. Case file number 5 opens then. Subscribe so you are at the desk when it does.